One of the best alternate genres to see sci-fi dip its toes into is horror. The crossover of these storytelling mediums has led to some of the best films in both genres. Still, the roster of films that make up sci-fi horror is truly expansive, and thus it's easy for a couple to slip by unnoticed. But just because they didn't garner the attention as they deserve, does not mean that they are not worthy of your time. So I am Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 9 obscure sci-fi horror movies that you need to watch. Number 9, Bad Taste. Looking back at the first movie made by one of your favourite filmmakers can be a lot of fun, but for fans of the summer blockbuster director that is Peter Jackson, they might end up feeling a little disoriented if they aren't prepared. While he's best known now for creating wild and lavish worlds, Jackson started in the twisted world of splatter movies, and his first feature-length project was this crazy sci-fi flick. The movie follows 4 members of the Astro Investigation and Defense Service. Yep, AIDS, how very tasteful. As they investigate a town where all the civilians have been replaced by maniacal aliens, who are reaping human flesh for their intergalactic fast food chain. From there, it becomes a simple us versus them movie full of violence, bloodshed, and a ton of practical effects. A walk in the Shire, this is not. Bad Taste had a tiny budget, and thus all of the visuals have a perfect B-movie vibe. But with the cinematic eye of Jackson, it was clear that he was going places, as this flick makes up for its cheapness wherever it can, by playing to the grossness of the gore and going as over the top as possible. The genre is called splatter for a reason, folks. It's a great experience if you want something that lovingly subverts the sci-fi genre by filling it full of profanity and, well, bad taste. Does what it says on the tin. Number 8, Repo, the Genetic Opera. Imagine if the infamous director of Saw 2, 3, and 4, Darren Lynn Bousman, partnered up with a mad musical genius known as Terence Zdunich to produce a wild sci-fi horror opera full of blood, guts, and rock numbers. Well, you don't need to imagine it because it already exists, and it's a thrillingly over-the-top ride. Repo is a rock opera based in a twisted future where a disease has decimated the population. But out of the ashes rose a company named GeneCo, who introduced an organ replacement system that saved thousands. Sadly, these organs are only yours if you can keep up with your payments. Otherwise, the dreaded Repo Man will come to collect. Alongside the grander narrative of the world comes the exciting tale of a young girl called Shiloh, who suffers from weak genetics and thus is kept inside by her father. Soon, GeneCo gets involved in her life and things get a bit wild. Everything in this movie is deliciously pulpy. The gory practical effects are like a comic book version of the human anatomy, and the bright and overly stylized visuals reflect this. It's also dripping with character thanks to how bombastic everything is. Plus, the songs are genuinely fantastic, as they capture a vibe of both musical theatre and hard rock. If you thought Sweeney Todd was the only horror musical, well then you were dead wrong. I'll make myself laugh, yeah. Number 7, Tetsuo The Iron Man. If you've ever stumbled across this movie, it's probably more for its infamy than its mainstream success. This flick is one of the most chaotic and peculiar cult movies in cinema history, thanks to it being one of the most visually unique films to come out of the horror genre. And after you check it out for yourself, you will probably agree. Tetsuo follows a man who slowly turns into a disturbing hybrid of flesh and metal after accidentally killing a metal fetishist. Right. However, the movie's narrative isn't really the focus, as it's the lavish cinematography and twisted visuals that really get you on board. There's a truly mechanical feel to the movie, not just because of the literal metal, but also thanks to the grainy black and white image and balanced pacing. Another critical aspect of Tetsuo that makes it stand out is the excellent sound design. All the things you hear in this film feel natural yet metallic, even turning a scene of 2 people eating into nightmare fuel thanks to the sharp sounds. It is definitely one to put on your Shudder watch list if you haven't already, because whether you like it or you don't, it will definitely leave you feeling something. Number 6, Tokyo Gore Police. Now, this movie is the definition of a sick flick, as it's got more body horror and disturbing imagery than a David Lynch convention, albeit with far more blood. It truly lives up to its name regarding gore and violence, so make sure you watch this one on an empty stomach. You've been warned. In near future Future Tokyo, a mad scientist creates a virus that mutates human beings into disgusting mutants known as engineers. No, not those ones. To combat this, the police force set up a privatized military unit to dispatch the creatures with ruthless efficiency. Amongst these officers is our lead, Ruka, who alongside tackling engineers is also seeking out her father's killer. Japan is undoubtedly a great place to go if you're looking for unique and well-crafted horror. But Tokyo Gore Police makes the majority of its cinema look like child's play. The phrase, not the movie. Its bombastic practical effects are mesmerizing. And while it is disgusting to look at, you just won't be able to take your eyes off it. Although excessive gore is a significant part of the movie's appeal, it also deserves a lot of credit for setting up such a unique sci-fi world. But unlike Star Wars or Trek, you probably won't want to spend time in this one. Number 5, The Hidden. In The Hidden, a law-abiding citizen suddenly goes on a murderous rampage in LA for seemingly no reason. When the police discover similar crimes across the city, they realize that this is not an isolated incident. The cops soon discover these felons are strong enough to withstand injuries that should kill a regular human. As they come face to face with the criminals, the cops then learn that there is a far greater threat looming on the horizon. Despite the fact that Hidden has an intriguing premise, it could have been ruined if the mystery was explained a bit too early. Thankfully, the little-known film keeps tight-lipped about the origins of the crime waves until the climax, keeping viewers guessing until the very end. Another interesting aspect about The Hidden is how often it changes genre. It switches from horror to action to sci-fi to mystery thriller quite regularly, preventing the film from becoming formulaic. Even though The Hidden was a commercial and critical success, it still doesn't get as much attention as other horror flicks of the decade, which is definitely a good enough reason to go and give it a look. Number 4, Time Crimes. Although time travel may be one of the most ubiquitous tropes in sci-fi, it's still very hit or miss. At its best, the introduction of time-bending antics can lead to an engrossing movie, but at its worst, it can make a film entirely unwatchable thanks to how convoluted and confusing it becomes. Thankfully, Time Crimes sits with the first of those two options. Hooray! The movie follows a man called Hector who steps into a time machine in the Spanish countryside and finds himself sent back by 1 hour. Everything spirals from there as he gets involved in a convoluted plot of attempting to kill his other selves to return to normality. But disaster after disaster occurs. Time Crimes is a fantastic exploration of time travel, as while the plot does have its confusing moments, it's so well paced that you'll find yourself following it quite well. Plus, the film's low budget is hidden expertly, as it is visually stunning with plenty of violence and some strong visuals, such as the pink stained bandage mask that you can see right here. If you want a time travel experience that makes Back to the Future look like a kids movie, then look no further, baby. Number 3, Night of the Creeps. In Night of the Creeps, 2 nerds accidentally set space worms loose in a campus, turning everyone in the area into undead creatures. Because this film riffs on stories about alien invasions, slashers, and zombies, one would expect the result to be as derivative as possible. And you would be right. Night of the Creeps covers every cliche in the book, but the movie is fully aware of how ridiculous it is. It knows it isn't reinventing the wheel, it's trying to be as entertaining as possible. With its creative gore, amazing action sequences, and wacky humor, Night of the Creeps is endlessly enjoyable and absolutely hilarious. It also has a ton of great one-liners, although none of them are as brilliant as the good news is your dates are here, the bad news is they're dead. Even though the comedy could have undercut the gore, first-time director Fred Decker manages to juggle the two genres perfectly. He proved he had a knack for genre blending for his follow-up Monster Squad 2. Whether you're a big fan of comedy, horror, or sci-fi, Night of the Creeps has something for everyone. Number 2, Tau. The late 2010s were great for scary science fiction movies, as along with High Life and Annihilation, we also were treated to Tau. The premise of Tau starts out as fairly conventional, subjects held prisoner at the behest of a morally dubious overseer and a governing AI system. But what starts off as a simple premise soon takes a twist, as the overseeing AI teams up with the unwilling participants in these trials. The titular AI has a dominating presence that scientist Ed Skrein uses to keep prisoners in check, and it's only after it sees prisoner Julia punished and it grows a sort of conscience and aids her against the evil Alex that the film starts to come to life. It's not an inherently new story, but like most horror, it's shot in a more minimal way, as to keep the audience constantly fearing what's around the next corner. And Scrine's turn as the sinister scientist is so damn good that you almost end up rooting for him at times, until you remember that yeah, he's the bad guy, oh yeah. It also has some absolutely stunning visuals in there too. Just look at that visual right there, look at it, oh, gorgeous. Number 1, Beyond the Black Rainbow. Those who aren't avid horror movie fans tend to think of the genre as a very set type. You've got your typical speedy pace, big set pieces, and undeveloped characters who act as a means to bring as many jump scares as possible. But Beyond the Black Rainbow is a perfect exploration of how a different approach to typical horror conventions can pay off. In the Research Institute Arborea, a scientist takes on the work of his mentor to help the human race transcend their limitations, all while keeping a young woman with psychic abilities hostage in a hospital beneath the institute. The film follows Elena, the girl, and Niall, the psychopathic scientist, as she tries to escape and Niall falls into a spiral of instability. This truly is a horror unlike anything you have seen before, people, as the deliberately slow pacing makes it feel like you're fighting to push a boulder up a hill, yet brings you into a hypnotic state that keeps you well and truly invested. Now, it is safe to say that many people might find the deliberately slow pacing hard to get past. Still, if you do, you are rewarded with imaginative visuals and a terrifying performance from Michael Rogers as Niall. The film's also visually beautiful, thanks to the grainy yet polished visual style reminiscent of sci-fi from the early 70s, such as 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, Solaris, and Enter the Void. So if you can get over that pacing, you are in for a treat here. Now, what sci-fi horror would you recommend to a pal? Let me know in the comments section right down below.